Hi, welcome to I Do Canals. Ever since I got canals under my skin, I wanted to come here. This is the Bridgewater Canal. This is where it all began. The 5,000 canals at its peak in this country began right here. Francis Egerton, the third Duke of Bridgewater, owned a coal mine over there, Worsley Delph, and he commissioned his steward, John Gilbert, to make the mine more profitable. And in order to do that, he needed to make it less prone to flooding and find a way to transport the coal to Manchester, which is about 2.5 hours that way by boat. So they built the canal. At first, by 1761, it ran from here to Manchester. A few years later, they added the Lee branch, which runs away under this bridge here and joins the Leeds-Liverpool Canal Lee branch at Lee. And this is where it all began. The entire canal is absolutely without locks. It was a contour canal. They didn't know about putting locks in really. They knew about flash locks on rivers, but they didn't know how to incorporate them into a canal. James Brindley was consulted on the route and how best to go about it. You can see today that the water is slightly orangey in colour, and that's because the mine, way back when it was still opening, right up until 1968, had a lot of iron ochre or iron ore that would leak out and colour the water. Today, that colour is caused by boats going up and down and stirring up the bottom silt and just moving it around and changing it all again. So, I hope you enjoy our video. We're going to talk about this building here, which is the Packet House. We're going to talk about Worsley Delph mine. The little bridge here is called the Alphabet Bridge. Lots to come and see. I hope you enjoy our video. And thanks for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. In 1851, the first Earl of Ellesmere had this landing stage and these steps built specifically for the visit of Queen Victoria. And she was coming to see Worsley New Hall, no doubt some dignitaries therein. Queen Victoria had specifically had a barge commissioned just for the occasion. How grand is that? Now Anne, who lives up there, this is her front garden onto the canal. Absolutely amazing. I mean, what a view. She's got some lovely seating up there. You could just sit on the steps, watch the narrowboats go by and the swans and everything else. Absolutely stunning. I'm not interested in your babies. There's a goose here who was making all these threatening noises. He said, "We're going to duff me up." So over here, the smaller arch was a way through to the Delph. The bigger one clearly isn't. It's closed off. There's a swan coming down here to tell me that I shouldn't be close, so I can do this quickly. Clearly this is a swan, and this is not. My ornithology needs more work. His babies don't give a hoot. They're just getting closer and eating the grass. Anyway, so the smaller arch here was a way through to the Delph beyond. It's smaller than the main arch, which is this side. We're going to look at that in just a moment or two. That one there just happens to be where they put the rest of the bridge over. And it's, as you can see, it's solid rock the other side. I'm going to disappear before I get eaten by a goose. I'm going to go and have a look at these over here. There's an interesting signboarding here. And it says there were several types of boats used in the operations of the Delph. And some of them went right into the mine. There were some small ones, which are emulated by these stone models, if you like, similar in size, perhaps a little bigger than that. And then there was a boat which was called the Starvationer. And the Starvationer was the sort of the prototype, if you like, for the narrowboat, or really not necessarily prototype, but what the narrowboat was based on. James Brindley built his first lock modelled on a Starvationer boat, which were less than 7 feet wide. The modern day narrowboat are generally much bigger or longer than a Starvationer boat, but he kind of started to build his canals based on the Starvationer, and the dimensions of the narrowboat, albeit longer, determined the size of the locks and the bridges. And of course then it was Sorry, Mr. Goose, I'm just going to come past here. Then it was a case of bigger boats were needed, and the wide beam came on the scene. But in most cases, it was far too expensive to widen all of the previously built narrow gauge canals. And this is why today we have some big sections north and south of the canal network that are wide beam, but they don't connect in the middle. You've got to be a narrow boat to go from one end to the other to the top. If only he'd seen a different kind of boat or thought about things a bit differently, our canal network today would be wide beam throughout, and you can traverse top to bottom without having to have different kinds of boats. How about that? Now, this building here has some significance. Let's go take a look. This is reputed to be the oldest house in Worsley, and it dates back to 1725. That predates the canal, and it's called the nailmaker's workshop. Since then, it's been a library, a reading room, a house, it's been offices. I think today it's somebody's home. It's a 3-story building. As its name suggests, it had something to do with making nails. I can't think of any other reason why a building would be called Nailmaker's Workshop. And I think the rendering has gone on much later in life. I suspect back in the day it was brick, rather like the packet house, which we're going to talk about next. This is the packet house, and from 1769, so 7 or 8 years after the canal was opened, the packet house was a place where you could buy tickets and take a comfortable ride from here to Manchester in about 2.5 hours. It was cheap, it was affordable, and it was comfortable, and I suspect it was only the upper class that could take advantage of such services. This is a representation of the act that had to be agreed by the king to enable the Duke of Bridgewater to build the canal. And it says, an act to enable the most noble Francis, Duke of Bridgewater, to make a navigable butt or canal from or near Worsley Mill over the River Irwell to the town of Manchester and in the county, looks like it says Palatine, of Lancaster, and to or near Longford Bridge in the township of, Shretford, difficult to read, in the county. I'm not sure what the 1/2/3 means. That there looks like George II, a representation of his signature. And when you look at this, this is the mine entrance. This is all of the boats and where the crane is here. That's the canal to Manchester, and this is the one to Lee, the Lee branch. This is the tunnel we could see on the other side when I nearly got eaten by the rampant goose. For a minute, I was properly cornered. Anyway, I survived. The tunnel is cut directly through the rock, and coupled with the bridge, it formed a one-way system for incoming and outgoing boats, making the resulting waterway traffic much easier to manage. I flew the drone carefully under the bridge. You can see what remains of an opening in the roof of the bridge. This was a hatch that allowed boats to unload directly to the road. Looking from above, the 2 arms leading into the Delph are clear. You can see just how these 2 arms, with their arches through the road, permitted the boat traffic in and out of the Delph. The strange-looking orange structure on the hard-standing or Delph Island is a modern-day interpretation of the Delph crane that was used for loading and unloading the mine boats. It looks strangely modern and out of place, but it is actually very close as to how the crane looked. There is a link in the description to the original drawing, and here it is on screen. As we approach the mine entrance, we see the boat shapes in the water. These are actual size and show just how busy the mine entrance was with all the boat traffic going in and out. This last shot shows how small the mine entrance is. It must have been seriously claustrophobic inside and a really dark and dangerous place to work. The inscriptions on these bronze slabs of coal are really, really heartrending. It says here, where possible, pit ponies were used to carry the coal. However, in narrow seams, women and children had the job of carrying the coal whilst crawling on their hands and knees. Children were chained, belted, harnessed like dogs in a go-kart, black saturated with wet, and more than half naked, crawling on their hands and feet and dragging their heavy loads behind them. They present an appearance undesirably disgusting and unnatural. And this is something from the Children's Employment Commission report. My God, when we used to tell our kids to go do their homework, imagine if we said, hey, we got you a job. There's another one here, and it's about a little boy, and his job was to hold and close a door in the mine, and he spent 12 hours a day down the mine, and he only ever saw daylight on Sundays. Astonishing. And he got beaten for falling asleep. Absolutely incredible. William Richards, aged 7.5. I have been down about 3 years. God, he was 4. When I first went down, I couldn't keep my eyes open. I don't fall asleep now. I smokes my pipe. I smokes half a quarter a week. This little fellow was intelligent and good-humoured. His cap was furnished with the usual collier candlestick, and his pipe stuck familiarly in his buttonhole. 7.5. My goodness. I can only assume that this has been modelled to life size, and this waist belt here is too small for an adult. It's got to be for a child. Can you imagine? 12 hours a day. And some of these kids were 4 when they started. And there was a girl called Sarah, she was 8. And she says she works in the total dark all day. Absolutely shocking. Shocking, isn't it? My goodness. And I have to say this. The upper class, like Francis Egerton, made their millions on the backs of children and women and men working in awful conditions. Goodness me. Now I'm making that assumption, and I might be wrong, because he inherited mines, or he bought the mines, I can't remember which, and maybe he changed things. But I have a feeling he didn't. Up these steps there's inset metallic names. Walkden, Moseley Common, Ellesmere, Fanpit, Little Hulton, Ashton's Field, Buckley Lane, Brackley, and Dixon Green. Now, this is a wild stab in the dark, but I think they're names of mine tunnels. We were reading a signboard just over here, and I asked Karen, how many miles of tunnel do you reckon there might be? And she came up with the answer, 10. And had I not read beforehand, I'd have thought, yeah, maybe. It's a lot, isn't it? 10 miles. 52 miles of tunnel here in this mine. And dug by hand, and largely by children and women and men in the dark, maybe with a candle. That's shocking, absolutely shocking. Wow. bridge is the Alphabet Bridge, and it's a remake of a bridge that was alleged to be here in the past, and it's called the Alphabet Bridge. It had 26 planks. Today there are the 26 letters of the alphabet on the planks, and rumour has it that the bridge was put here to help educate children. When the first Earl of Ellesmere and his wife, Lady Harriet Egerton, arrived in the area, they found it to be religiously and educationally destitute, and they set about by building schools and churches and educational items like this bridge. One or two of the locals say it's not entirely factual. I think that's kind of nice. I think it's kind of romantic. It would be good if it was true, and I hope that it is. If you know any different, you tell us in the comments. This crane, sadly not in working order, can be found just a few yards down the Lee branch. Just about everything is there, and with a small amount of work, I think it could be restored. Out of all the places that Karen and I have been to film about canals, I don't think we found somewhere that is so interesting, so full of information, so diverse. Absolutely amazing time. The Worsley Delph mine was an eye-opener to learn about kids as young as 4 going to work down a mine. I mean, we didn't send ours out to work until they were about 8 or 9, you know. We didn't. Honestly, we're good parents, really. We are. Ask our children, they'll tell you. So look, if you're thinking of coming here, there's parking, free parking just up here, just opposite from Packet House. You've got eateries and restaurants down here. I think there was somewhere to get ice creams too. There's a Chinese restaurant just over, right next door to Worsley Delph. There's a wealth of information. All day long there's been joggers and walkers and couples and families with kids. It has been a bit tricky to film. We've had to start and stop a few times. I think this is version number 7 just for the outro. How about that? So look, if you've enjoyed the video, please press the like button. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. And when you do that, don't forget to push the little bell and you'll be notified of our next video. Karen and I will be back to see you again very soon. Cheerio.